Hello, everyone. I hope you're all having a great week, and welcome to another episode of Real Mob Stories with James Proctor, where we discuss the American Mafia from its rich history to what's happening in the genre. If you haven't done so already, do me a big favor and subscribe to the channel. Also, if you like the content, please hit the like button. Today, we have several stories I'm following. Today's episode is going to be heavily focused on the Bonanno family. We're going to discuss the latest with Gene Borrello and the drama around his interview with DJ Vlad. Also, have some behind the scenes information you don't want to miss about this. Also, today's Gangland News has some very interesting articles. I want to share the stories with you and give you my thoughts, including Dominick Cicale being the victim of another scam, the latest with the health crisis of Ronnie G Giallanzo, and also what's going on with Michael Mancuso, who's back home after spending 11 months in the can for violating his supervised release by meeting with known felons. Without further delay, on to our feature presentation. As most of you know, Gene Borrello just got interviewed by DJ Vlad, and what you saw was that the interview was actually put up, and he's got a members only section of his site. So if you're willing to pay $7 a month for a membership, then you're able to see the full video before everyone else. And if you don't do that, then you'll still see the content, but it's stripped to you over, a period of a week or two with a different segment each day. And so what happened was over the weekend, the interview was put up, and then all of a sudden it was taken down. And then you'll notice that the interview has been put back up, but the content's been edited. And so, why did this happen? I've got some behind the scenes information I want to share with you on that. Someone complained, obviously, that's what happened. And, I think there were two areas that people were not happy with, and this was multiple complaints. And just to let you know that DJ Vlad's pretty good about responding to folks. I know that a few of the folks that have spoken with Vlad, and, he actually responded back to them. And so what happened is that there were at least two areas within the interview that upset people. One was there were comments about the Gotti family that weren't true. They weren't very nice. If you know, a couple of years ago, Gene Borrello was sued by the Gotti family, I believe by Angel Gotti. And that case, I know that she spoke about it yesterday on her show. And so she wasn't, they're not pursuing that anymore. But, there were a lot of memes that were made, fake Instagram accounts. It's just really ugly and something that it doesn't make sense to do, especially, going after a grandmother, going after a woman that's, 60 years old. And so that was a big part of it. And he went on and was saying bad stuff again about the Gottis. And then the second part that might even be worse was that he was going after the wife of Joey Merlino. And, he's done this before. This isn't the first time that he's done that. But, obviously it's just not very nice to go after family members, especially women. I don't understand that in this genre. We see that all the time. It's just, to me, not, it's just not, a real man does not do that, in my opinion. And so he just continues to make these mistakes. And so what DJ Vlad did, he sanitized the story, the interview, and this sanitized version is now up. So like I said, you can see the full interview if you're willing to pay the $7 a month for a membership. Otherwise, I believe right now you can see the first 4 or 5 segments. And it looks like the full interview's around an hour and a half. The part that I've seen is just talking about his upbringing. It sounds like he definitely had a difficult childhood. He didn't finish school. He got into drug dealing at a very early age, and, been pretty much in trouble, since he was a teenager. And, he's 40 years old. I mean, when's he going to learn his lesson? Like I said, people have tried to help him. He doesn't want to listen. He just will continue to act without thinking. But that's Gene Borrello. So the next story is dealing with Dominick Cicale. Dominic is the victim again of another scam. I feel bad about this in a way because, I mean, and I'm not looking at from the aspect of, him cooperating or any of that, but just looking at that, he was involved in that life. He, obviously did a lot of bad stuff, but he was a good moneymaker with the Bonanno family. And, we know that he cooperated, but, as I followed Dominic through the years, especially since he got released back in 2012, I noticed that, he's been victimized by a few different people. And I've talked about some of the stories about this, but this is a new story of where he was victimized. So I'm going to give you a little context on what happened. So there's a lady named Yvonne Rossetti. So back in 2011, Yvonne, who was the wife of a Queens gangster, she was ripping off several friends and relatives in Howard Beach. This was a real estate scam. Apparently, it was around $800,000. And, that wasn't the first time. Even back in 2006, there were FBI agents that had recordings of a wise guy telling Rosetta's husband that she needed to pay back victims or she'd end up in the trunk of a car. And at that time, the feds were, looked at her as a victim. But, it's obvious that she was not innocent either. And in the case in 2011, where she was scamming people in Howard Beach in this real estate scam, she did get 2 years in prison. But again, she has not learned her lesson. So she's going now by the name of Yvonne Marquez. Okay. And now she's scamming people in Florida. And what happened with Dominick Cicale is that she's accused of stealing $102,000 from Dominic. And what did Dominic do? And this is actually in the Gangland News today, Jerry Capisi. So, I ask that you go over to Gangland News if you want to read the full story. But, I'm just going to, give the highlights of it in the context. So Dominic's not happy about being scammed. He wants her prosecuted for fraud. And then he sent a letter to Judge Garofalo. So Garofalo was his sentencing judge, and he did this, I guess, hoping that, something can be done about this lady, now going by Yvonne Marquez. And the letter was sent on July 15th. So in this July 15th letter that Dominic wrote to Judge Garofalo, he's asking for assistance in having someone in law enforcement investigate the allegations that he has against Rossetti. And Rossetti, again, is a 2-time convicted felon and also a cooperating witness. And what happened was that Cicale told Garofalo that he advanced Rossetti the cash, the $102,000 in April, as part of a formalized partnership agreement. And the deal called for her to invest $4.65 million in trust funds that she would receive in a real estate deal that involved 2 multi-million-dollar properties that Dominic owns. And then what he learned was that Rossetti's so-called trust funds were backed up by fraudulent bank statements. He said he was seeking the judge's help because he finds himself in a troubling situation that threatens everything that he's worked so hard to achieve since his release from prison in 2013. And we know that Dominic had stated in his podcast that he was a victim of a scam, but, he didn't mention her name. He just mentioned there was an unnamed cooperating witness. And also we know, and I've kind of broke this story as well, that Cicale had reported that sources had told him that Bonanno and Genovese folks were looking to kill him over things that he had said about Michael Mancuso. So Cicale said that he had met Rossetti a few years ago and that it was Frankie Fabiano, Frankie Fap, that introduced him to Rossetti. And this was back in 2020. And Frankie never mentioned, according to Dominic, that Rossetti had a criminal record. And at the time, Dominic said he was trying to assist Rossetti in generating income by selling the PPE medical supplies. If you remember right, during COVID, during the pandemic, people needed these supplies because, the lungs were affected by the virus and people were struggling with breathing, and they needed these apparatuses, and there was a shortage of it at the time because of how prevalent the pandemic was. And anyway, earlier this year, he reached out to her when he was looking for an investor to partner up with on these 2 parcels of land that he owned in Winter Park, Florida. And he noted that Frankie Fap introduced her just as Yvonne, and then actually on his caller ID, it said Yvonne Lisa Marie. And Cicale said that Rossetti located a woman who agreed to pay $2.7 million for one of the properties on Lake Howell Lane, the same street she lived on, but the buyer defaulted. He indicated that when Rosetta, who had impressed Cicale with her drive and determination, really sucked him in by claiming that she had received her trust fund money of $5.4 million 30 days after her birthday on April 13th of 2024. Rossetti persuaded him to get a new real estate broker and proposed what turned out to be a too good to be true partnership for the 2 properties. So in return for $55,000, she got $47,000 more later. So that's the $102,000. And then Rosetta would facilitate the purchase of both parcels for $4.65 million when she got the money. And then she would allow Cicale to retain 50% of the construction work for a development plan with an expected profit of $9 million. The money didn't show up. It was 60 days later, money hadn't showed up, and it became clear to Cicale and his lawyers that the paperwork was fraudulent. They conducted a Google search and realized that she had pulled off a meticulously orchestrated scam. He then confronted Rossetti about the news accounts about her same scam against Bonanno family mobsters. And then Rossetti fessed up and pulled him in further. She recounted her past convictions with a sympathetic tone, Cicale said. And he said that she is one of the most convincing fraudsters that he had ever encountered. What a relief, she told him. I've been wanting to tell you about my past for some time now, but didn't know how to bring it up. I did everything for my sick daughter, and I'd do it all over again. So it wasn't until May 22nd that Cicale actually learned who Rossetti's real identity was. And then a few weeks later, on June 26th, he gave his allegations about her to the FBI. And then the reason he sent the letter to Judge Garofalo was that weeks had passed and wasn't getting any updates from the FBI. And then what's kind of interesting also, Dominick Cicale actually got confirmation from Gene Borrello and Rossetti's husband, Vincent, which were both members of Ronnie G's Howard Beach crew. They also live in Florida, confirmed that her $5.4 million trust fund was a scam. Cicale then complained about her to Frankie Fap. Frankie was extremely upset. The next day, Yvonne gave Dominic back $3,000 in cash. And since then, she's given him a total of $67,000. But in addition to asking Judge Garofalo to pass his allegations on to prosecutors, Cicale said he plans to file a civil suit seeking damages for her scam. So Rossetti owes me a balance of $230,000. And then, according to Rossetti, she's saying that Cicale's full of shit. insisted that she paid Cicale most of the money, advanced her in a business deal that didn't materialize, and that the rest of the money will be paid back next week. But Rossetti declined to discuss the $5.4 million in the trust fund she never received that was signed in the April 16, 2024 partnership. We'll continue to cover this story. We'll find out if Dominic actually got the rest of his money. We'll find out what happened with the letter to Judge Garofalo. Are we going to see Rossetti getting indicted for this? Part of the challenge is that she is also a cooperating witness, and so we'll see what happens. But it is interesting. In one of my conversations with Dominic, what he told me is that there's more treachery in the legitimate business world than there ever was in the mob. And it just seems like he just gets into a lot of bad luck. So I wish him the best in all of this. All right, so we'll go to Mikey Knows. So he recently got out of prison. He spent 11 months for violating his supervised release by multiple times being seen with other mobsters and felons. And he had been in a halfway house for a while, but now he's back at his home in Long Island. Part of the problem is that he was seen with people like Johnny Joe Spirito and Ernie Iello. And these were both people he shouldn't have been with. And Mancuso, even though he's out, he's on a post-prison supervised release for the next 2 years or so. So he still can't meet with them or any reputed mobsters or ex-cons. And also what's kind of interesting is that Mancuso's got a girlfriend, Laura Keller. And, he can't go to her business because apparently there's several people that's associated with the mob that goes to this place called Real Eyes Optical, including Vinny Union's Ricardo. And so he's allowed to drive his girlfriend to work, drop her off, but he's not allowed to actually go into the building. But what we know is that, he's out. We'll see if he can stay out of trouble for the next 2 years. But just wanted to share that story. And the final story is regarding Ronnie G Giallanzo. So I did a short earlier today, and let me just play that, and I'll give you the context of this story. Some updated information on a story I've been covering regarding Ronald G Giallanzo to share with you. Ronnie G's attorneys filed a motion requesting a compassionate release, and Ronnie G is allegedly enacting capital regime for the Bonanno family. Back in 2018, Ronnie G pled guilty and was sentenced to 14 years for racketeering. Ronnie G is 54 years old and is currently in FCI Allenwood Low. Just a week or so ago, Ronnie G had an annual lung test and it was discovered he has a 5mm tumor in his lungs and he needs an immediate CAT scan, which can't be done at the federal prison. In the filing, it states that Ronnie G provided heroic service to his country and city during the Ground Zero cleanup from 9/11 that resulted in lung cancer. In addition, Ronnie G survived a heart attack and suffers from hypertension. The original sentence of 14 years was actually 5 years longer than the high end of his plea agreement and should be vacated on several grounds. He's scheduled to be released in March 2028. Yeah, what I found was interesting was that I'm not sure why the feds went above the, basically the maximum recommended sentence. So the maximum recommended sentence was 9 years. He ends up getting 14 years. But, I had done a previous short earlier this year where I knew that they were trying to get the compassionate release for Ronnie G, but now this is new information with the health issues. So, we'll see what happens there. Wish him the best of luck. So do you think that Ronnie G will get his compassionate release? He is in a low, where he's at in FCI Allenwood, that's a low security prison. Or it's not a penitentiary, it's a federal correctional institute. And so it's better than being in a USP, and, it's not a camp, but it is, at least, you get a little more freedom than you would in a USP. The problem is that there's just not the CAT scan that he can get in prison. So he needs to get that. And so we'll see. I don't know if the tumor's benign or cancerous, but obviously he needs that CAT scan to be able to determine that. So thank you so much for watching today's show. I appreciate all the support. We had another excellent month in July. I posted the numbers there on the community page, and I'm grateful for all of you for your support. Thank you so much. And thank you also for watching the show I did with Jeff Nadeau the other day. It was a lot of fun, and we'll be doing more things together in the future. Until next time, take care, stay safe, and God bless you always.